Hello, friends. Today I'd like to talk about this book, which I produced last year, Sri Lanka, a Travelogue with Family History, uh, which is an account, basically. But it's based on my visit to Sri Lanka in early September of 2023. I've already done one video introducing this, but this time I'd like to actually read uh, most of the text or all of it if there is time. So first of all, let me share there we are, share the PDF. This is the text. So the title, is Sri Lanka, a Travelogue with Family History, um, September 1st to 12th, 2003. That's when I went to Sri Lanka. And that's my name in full. Charles is my middle name, which is was my grandfather's name. This is why I've included the full name this time. All right, so copyright me, published through Amazon KDP, available as a Kindle book, paperback, and hardcover. First published in October of last year. And that's my email address. All errors are mine. This book is dedicated to Eleanor Ann Thompson, EAT, and all her descendants. We, the Ruxton Allen family, are still searching for her likeness in a portrait or photograph. The blue colours of the back cover represent the topaz, which I purchased as one of my souvenirs. There we are. There's the back cover. If you can just about see that. Sorry. There we are. There's a web page for the book. This is the flag of Sri Lanka. This is a comment on it from Wikipedia. Anyway, the flag of Sri Lanka, also called the Sinha flag or lion flag, consists of a golden lion holding a kastane sword in its right forepaw in a maroon background with 4 gold bow leaves, one in each corner. See the bow leaves there. This is bordered by gold, and to its left are 2 vertical stripes of equal size in teal and orange, with the orange stripe closest to the lion. The lion and the maroon background represent the Sinhalese, while the saffron border and 4 bow leaves represent concepts of Metha, Karuna, Mudita, and Upeka, respectively. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced those. The stripes represent the country's 2 largest minorities, with the orange representing the Tamils living in Sri Lanka, both the Sri Lankan Tamils and the Indian Tamils of Sri Lanka, and the green stripe representing the Sri Lankan Moors, Muslims of Sri Lanka. The gold and yellow border represents the other minority communities of the country. So it's a very inclusive flag, and the shape is a little bit unusual as well, and because it's got that extra bit tacked on the left, as it were. Interesting. Okay, here's the map of the country, and I circled the places that I visited. So starting in Colombo, over here on the west coast, where everybody starts if they fly in. I went to Kandy in the middle for 2 nights, and Ella for 3 nights. There we are. Ella is also circled. Galle, down on the coast here, for 2 nights, and back to Colombo for 1 night. Okay, so I made a round trip, literally, clockwise trip. It was my first visit to the country, so that's how I designed the itinerary. So next we have a foreword by His Excellency Sri Lanka's ambassador to Japan. He very kindly and graciously wrote a foreword. Introduction by the author. My family history in Sri Lanka. My clockwise journey around part of the island begins. Practical matters. Immediate reflections on my trip and notes. Travelogue. The journey begins. And flights to Sri Lanka from Japan, going via Tokyo and Bangkok. And then Sri Lanka, day 1, Colombo. Day 2, Colombo to Kandy. Day 3, Kandy to Dambulla and Sigiriya. That was a day trip. Day 4, Kandy to Ella by train. Day 5, Ella to Hopton Group. Day 6, Ella to Nuwara Elia. Day 7, Ella to Galle via Yala National Park. Day 8, Galle area. Day 9, Galle to Colombo, and day 10, Colombo to the airport. And then flights from Sri Lanka to Japan going via Singapore and Tokyo back to Fukuoka. And souvenirs. All right, so I will now read the foreword. I did not read the foreword or anything else in detail last time I made a video of this. Foreword. It is with immense pleasure and deep appreciation that I introduce the remarkable travelogue, Sri Lanka Travelogue with Family History, authored by Professor Emeritus Ian Ruxton of the Kyushu Institute of Technology. As I read through these pages, I was struck by the professor's ability to transport me through his journey, enriched with personal stories and thorough research, revealing the beauty of Sri Lanka's landscapes and traditions. I am also delighted to note that, in his travelogue, Professor Ruxton shares an exciting journey to Sri Lanka that blends personal curiosity and ancestral heritage. His adventure begins with a deep-rooted desire to explore Sri Lanka, a place that has long held a special spot in his lifelong list of dreams. He explores the legacy of his grandfather, Charles Ruxton, a colonial-era tea estate manager. The story uncovers family connections across generations. It is a testimony that proves the intricate family connections that make the story even more fascinating. I was also fascinated by pictures with insightful comments sharing Professor Ruxton's rich Sri Lankan experiences entangled with his family history. I sincerely wish that every reader of this book shall similarly be touched by its depth and insight. In closing, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Emeritus Ian Ruxton for his deep affection for Sri Lanka, for unveiling the country's beauty, culture, and heritage, and for taking readers on a captivating journey through its landscapes, moments, and discoveries, sharing it with the rest of the world. E. Rodney M. Pereira, Ambassador of Sri Lanka in Tokyo, Japan, October 2023. So I actually met the ambassador. He came down to Fukuoka in December with his staff, and I was able to give a 5-minute, or maybe was it 10 or 5 minutes, I forget, very short presentation of the book on that occasion, and it was very good to meet him. All right, so let's go on to my introduction. Introduction by the author. Sri Lanka is an island nation where various colourful gems are mined, but above all, it is itself a beautiful gem of an island, brimful of wonderful treasures, religious, historic, botanic, and cultural, from many nations near and far, who have all left their relics and mark here over many centuries, from ancient times to the present. This makes it an object lesson in diversity, as are the people themselves. It is a delightful, teardrop-shaped pearl in the Indian Ocean. This inevitably recalls Shakespeare's words about Britain being a precious stone set in the silver sea in his play Richard II. It is my aim to show some of the country's wonders through it, though in a 10-day first-ever visit, I merely scratched the surface. 1. My family history and Sri Lanka. The 5th commandment of the Holy Bible says, "Honor thy father and thy mother." I want to add, and their fathers and mothers, continuing back until Adam and Eve. For, of course, without them, none of us would be here. I had wanted to visit Sri Lanka for many years, and at last this became possible during my retirement in 2023. It had been high on my bucket list for personal reasons. My father, Alan Day Ruxton, 1925 to 2017, was born there, and my paternal grandfather, Charles Ruxton, 1892 to 1971, son of a Scottish farmer with the same name, Charles Ruxton, 1850 to 1901, worked there as a tea estate manager, superintendent, for many years, at least from about 1910 to 1951, so from the age of 18 until his retirement at the age of 59. Charles Jr. retired to Melgum Lodge near the village of Tarland in the western part of his native Aberdeenshire with his wife Evelyn Annie Gregg Ruxton, the daughter of one Peter Day, D-E-Y, described as a retired gentleman when they married. Peter seems to have made a lot of money in Aberdeen fishing, both trawling and processing, canning. He was so successful that he was called the Kipper King of Aberdeen. The house called Melgum Lodge is quite large, with 3 stories and in a substantial garden and estate, and it is a listed building which was built as a hunting or shooting lodge in the style of an arts and crafts alpine chalet in 1900, designed by the Aberdeen architect George Bennett Mitchell, 1865 to 1941. It is said to have been built for Queen Victoria's physician, who at the time was a local man, Sir James Reed, 1849 to 1923. Well, I haven't been able to confirm that, so it's just left as it is said to have been built. for him. Some footnotes. The desire to investigate and record my family's history has been in large part inspired by Sir Ernest Sato, 1843 to 1929, who, in his retirement, wrote a family chronicle of the English Satos, privately published at Oxford in 1925. Sato was also a pioneer in the writing of early guidebooks to Japan, so this book truly is a homage to his skills as a chronicler, and he visited Ceylon, as his diaries will show below. Ceylon, as Sri Lanka used to be called in Sato's time. Yes, the Kipper King of Aberdeen. That was from an email from Mike Ruxton, dated 19th of September 2023. And the Aberdeen architect George Bennett Mitchell. See the Historic Environment Scotland website. Okay. Next, we have some photographs. My grandmother, Evelyn Annie Gregg Ruxton, née Day, 1900 to 1975. Framed photograph formerly at A.D. Ruxton's home in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire. That's my father's home, the family home where I grew up. Annie M. Day, 1862 to 1916, wife of the wealthy Peter Day, who could afford a portrait painter, with young Evelyn, her only child, around 1904, from Melgum Lodge via Scott Ruxton. Okay, so various family members collaborated in producing all this information. So that's Evelyn as a 4-year-old. Melgum Lodge, Thailand in 1967. That was my photograph taken with a Kodak Brownie 127 camera, which was my first ever camera, and I was terribly proud of it. It was a good camera, of course. Probably a lot of people of a certain age will remember the Brownie 127. Wedding of Charles and Evelyn Ruxton in Colombo, 25th of October 1924, courtesy of Shona McCallan. Left to right, back row, Andrew Ruxton, Sarah or Sally Allen, née Littlejohn, or perhaps Nanny Watson. John Thompson, Jock Allen. Charles, Evelyn, and William, Bill Allen. Middle row, Marjorie and Marion Allen, daughters of Bill and Sarah. Front row, Sandy Watson with daughter Eleanor, known as Erica or Sheila. Okay, so that's that little family group at the wedding of my grandparents. Okay, and this is the entry in the registry of the Scots Church, recording the wedding and the marriage. Entry in the church register recording marriage of Charles and Evelyn, which was kindly sent to me by Mr. Kumara of the Scots Kirk, Colombo, after my visit on September 2nd, 2023. So on the left side, we have Charles Ruxton, 31, and on the right, Evelyn Ann Gregg Day, 24. A bachelor and a spinster. Charles was a planter, Scottish, and Evelyn was Scottish. What's that? Addresses. Waldemar Group, Uda Pusilawa, is that? And Evelyn, Ferry Hill Lodge, Aberdeen, arriving on Island. Maybe that was the name of a ship. Charles Ruxton's father was also Charles Ruxton, deceased. Evelyn Day's father was Peter Day, not deceased at the time. Charles Ruxton's father was a farmer. Peter Day was a retired gentleman. This was certified, I think, by J.A. Mulhall of the Badulla district. And the marriage took place at the St. Andrew's Scots Kirk in Colombo, 25th of October. Signature, who is that? Can't quite read that. Who signed it? Never mind. And then the signatures of, well, that seems to be Charles Ruxton and Evelyn's signature. Witness, Peter Day, retired, Ferry Hill Lodge, Aberdeen, Scotland. Nature of witness, father, I think. Yes, there we are. Bank or profession, Scottish. What does that say? Can't read that. Sign before me. Okay. Anyway. So farming stock on Charles's side. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is a photograph of a group of tea planters known as the Merry Men of Uva, meeting in 1919 at the old Hopton bungalow. They were giving a lunch for Mr. W.L. Kindersley, the government agent for the Central Province, sixth from left in middle row. Charles Ruxton is in the front row, second from left. At the time, he was the acting manager of Hopton Estate under the manager A.E. Ogilvy, fifth from left in middle row. Charles's half-brother, William Bill Allen, is on the far left of the middle row. So now we've got a quotation. The photo taken around 1919 is from the Times of Ceylon Christmas Annual 1920. Many of the younger planters in the photo, having served in World War I, concluded not long before. Sadly, none of those featured in these pictures are alive today, but some of their descendants could hopefully get some comfort peeking into the lives of their ancestors and the company they kept, and be able to tell their families of their pioneering work building up a great plantation industry in the country then called Ceylon. The list of names of those who attended the lunch at Hopton represents the creme de la creme of the planting fraternity of the Uva district at the beginning of the 20th century. Hugh Karunanayake, 2018. Yes, well, certainly I derive comfort from this photograph. I think it's a good photograph. And there's a web address for the photograph, which was accessed on 24th of October last year, 2023. Charles Ruxton's war service in World War I was short. His entry in Eileen Houston, FRGS, edited Ceylon Roll of Honour, World War I, Volume 2, reads as follows. Ruxton Charles, born in Newbury, which should be Newborough, Aberdeenshire, educated Aberdeen, address Urugala and Morgala Estates, Badulla Postal District, Rukatene, unmarried, arrived in England December 25th, 1917, commissioned September 13th, 1918, Regiment Gordon Highlanders, that's the Aberdeen area regiment, at Dreghorn Castle, Edinburgh, August 1918. War history, France, October 1918, attached 5th Cameron Highlanders at Haslebeek, Belgium. Army of Occupation from November 1918, demobbed March 1919. Charles and Evelyn Ruxton married in the Scots Kirk, Colombo, St Andrews, on the 25th of October 1924. Evelyn is described in the register as a spinster, still a common term in registers for unmarried women to this day, and she came out from Scotland. She was then 24 years old, while Charles was 31. Had they met before this, perhaps when Charles was in the UK 1917 to 18? I don't know, but anyway, they had 4 sons, of whom my father was the eldest. They were all born in Ceylon, as it was then called. In the following order: Alan Day, 30th of October 1925, Gordon Charles Day, 7th of November 1933, Ian Martin Day, 1935, and Kenneth Neal Day, 1937. I believe church records will confirm that they were all christened in the Scots Kirk in Colombo, although I haven't checked that. My father, Alan Day Ruxton, ADR, left the then British colony of Ceylon for education in Edinburgh, Scotland, at the age of 7 on the motor vessel Shropshire with his parents. They reached London on the 12th of May, 1933. He told my brother Sandy that thereafter he did not see his father for 11 years because he could not get away from Ceylon. His father could not get away from Ceylon. By that time, Alan was undergoing wartime pilot training in the Fleet Air Arm. He was fortunate that the war with Japan ended 3 weeks before he was due to see active service. Indeed. My grandfather Charles had a younger brother, Andrew William Ruxton, 1893 to 1972, just 1 year his junior. They both seem to have come together to Ceylon in about 1910. Records on the History of Ceylon Tea website, produced by the renowned Dilmar Company, show that Charles became an estate manager, superintendent at Rukatene, I'm sorry, I don't know the pronunciation, Rukatene, seems like, established in 1885 in the Badulla district, in 1916, where he stayed until 1918. So Charles became an estate manager in 1916 at Rukatene. Yes, some footnotes. My father, that's ADR, refused to call the country Sri Lanka after the official name changed in 1972. preferring the old name of Ceylon, that being the name of the country where he was born. Oral history interview of Alan Ruxton recorded on cassette tape by Sandy Ruxton in 2006 and transcribed by him. And then a quotation from an email from Mike Ruxton. After my father, that's Andrew Ruxton, left Robert Gordon's college aged about 16 in 1909, he worked for a short while in the Aberdeenshire Tramways office, presumably doing some very junior clerical work. This enabled him to get organised to travel to Ceylon and connect with the Allen brothers, Bill and Jock. To become a creeper, that's a trainee planter, you are expected to be quite young, so I think he must have arrived in Colombo in about 1910. I have a presentation silver salvo from Carson and Company, thanking him for 35 years service just at the end of World War II. That would confirm the 1910 arrival. Okay, back to the main text. So thereafter, Charles, next page, was acting manager at Amblangoda, Hopton Group and Swinton, 1919 to 20. Then he was manager at Waldemar, where my father was born, presumably in the estate bungalow constructed in 1913, as we know from the date on its chimney, from 1921 to 1928. And finally, manager at Hopton Group from 1928 to 1951. My father, ADR, told Sandy that the first bungalow, which the small three-person family lived in at Hopton Group, was very old and full of dry rot, and he used to suffer terrible sore throats there. The present two-story bungalow, in Britain we would call it a house, dates from 1932, after the old bungalow was pulled down. So it seems that young Alan Day Ruxton, my father, did not have much time to enjoy the new bungalow before being sent to Scotland, but his health improved. Andrew William Ruxton, AWR, was also a estate manager, though the Dilmar Company records are currently not complete on this point. They show him as an assistant manager at Ruanwela and Hakurugala in 1912 under the manager Ronald Wells, but then there is a gap until 1920 when he became manager at Colombo Gama, and then from 1921 until 1930 he was manager at Colombo Gama. Gama means village in Sinhala and Doloswela. As was quite common in those days, he had a son with a Sinhalese lady named Lucy, 1921 to 2006. The son was named Mervyn Gunasinghe, 1938, born. I was fortunate to meet Mervyn and two of his grandchildren, Yasantha and Shamanti, on September the 2nd this year, 2023. Now aged, what's happened? I've jumped. Now aged 85 and retired, he was formerly employed in forestry work for the Sri Lankan government. It was Shamanti who found my now defunct Ruxton family website on the internet in about 1998, and she contacted me out of the blue of cyberspace to tell me about this branch of the family. Andrew Ruxton married an Australian named Janet Frances Dunn, 1918 to 2002. He met her in Sydney on a brief leave, and they moved later to Durban, South Africa. Okay, so there's more footnotes here. I shan't read them all. Quite detailed. They moved later to Durban, South Africa. They had three children: Margaret, Jane, 1941, born 1941, Gillian Elizabeth, 1943 to 2019, and Michael Andrew, born 1946. Mervyn is therefore a half-brother to these three and was delighted to discover that he had a half-brother, Mike. It is indeed a tangled web that we weave, but a fascinating one. Anyway, I can say that meeting Mervyn and his family was a very important part of my Sri Lanka trip, and I was very happy to be able to do this on the first day in Colombo. And they kindly took me to the Scots Church. Here's a photograph. The occasion is unclear, but it seems to be a happy event, about 1930, since ADR seems to be about 5 years old, the wee boy in the middle, my father. Whoops. Back row, left to right, Janet Allen, née Greenshields, John Thompson, Jock Allen, Eleanor Ann Thompson, possibly, William Bill Allen, Alma Blacker, and an unknown man. We don't know. We've not confirmed a photograph of Eleanor Ann Thompson yet, which is a shame, but hopefully someday we will. Anybody who happens to know, please let me know if you can. Seated on the ground, Charles Ruxton, and my grandfather, standing next to him, his eldest son, Alan, ADR. The photo courtesy of Shona McAllen in Aberdeen. Okay. Footnotes, Carly Giddings, the elder daughter of Mike, has produced an hourglass tree of Andrew William Ruxton, and the phrase is from Sir Walter Scott's epic poem Marmion. That's his What a Tangled Web We Weave. Okay, sorry, go back a bit. So, the Allen family. There are, by the way, more half-brothers and half-sisters in this family history. Charles and Andrew's mother was Eleanor Ann Thompson, 1856 to 1937, who we're calling EAT, the so-called Belle of Newborough, a village north of Aberdeen. I have been there once. She was the daughter of a ship's captain in the Shanghai tea trade who lived at the imposing Shanghai House in Newborough. But she also married twice, first to a William Allen, a retired ship's captain and farmer, who died in 1888 at Eithon Lodge, Foveren, then to another farmer, Charles Ruxton, in 1890. With the former, she had two daughters, Margaret, Madge, and Chrissy, and two sons, Bill and Jock, John. The boys also became tea planters in Ceylon and were so engaged before the Ruxton brothers, Charles and Andrew, arrived. Shona McAllen has sent me information about the Allen family, which I reproduce with minor edits with her kind permission below. Okay. Yeah, she married to a William Allen. She was the daughter of a ship's captain in the Shanghai tea trade. That's very interesting, isn't it? A connection with the Orient. Okay, so descendants of Eleanor Ann Thompson, Allen Ruxton. Here we go. Eleanor was born at sea on the 12th of November, 1856. That's just over 100 years before I was born. I was born on the 16th of November, 1956. I've only just noticed that. Was born at sea on 12th of November, 1856 in the Bay of Biscay. Her father was a shipmaster, that's a ship's captain, and her mother, who accompanied him, was described as foreign-going in the 1881 census. What would that mean? Not British, I suppose. Foreign-going. Born to John Thompson and Eleanor Alexander, John Thompson and Christian Thompson below were siblings. Living in Foveren, Newborough, Aberdeenshire, Eleanor Alexander, mother of Eleanor Thompson, was herself the daughter of a shipmaster. Died 23rd of September 1937 at 9A Ferry Hill Place, Aberdeen. Death notified by son Charles Ruxton, living at Ferry Hill Lodge, Aberdeen. Eleanor married twice. First, A on May the 1st, 1875, to William Allen, the ship's captain and farmer. Born 10th of November to John Allen and Christian Thompson, sibling of John Thompson above. Died 6th of July, 1888. At Eithon Lodge, Foveren, the family home, aged 47 years. Note, William and Eleanor were first cousins. And B, Charles Ruxton, born 1850 in Foveren, farmer, married Eleanor Ann Thompson on the 12th of August, 1890 at Foveren, died 16th of March, 1901 in Aberdeen. Okay. So, two husbands. Oh, and Shona is a granddaughter of Marion Allen and Bill Wilson, great-granddaughter of Bill Allen, and great-great-granddaughter of Eleanor Ann Thompson. There we are in the footnote, sorry. Let's go to the next page. Eleanor's children were, with her first husband, William Allen, 1, Margaret Eleanor Allen, known as Madge, born at sea, Bay of Bengal, 8th of December, 1881, approximately, 5 years at the 1901 census. Married George Rennie, born 3rd of November, 1885, died 23rd of March, 1963, of Monymusk, Aberdeenshire, on the 1st of March, 1910, in Cape Town, South Africa. 7 children, one of whom was awarded the Military Cross in World War II. Died 5th of October, 1965, in Johannesburg, South Africa. Madge and George lived in South Africa for many years, where he was a successful stockbroker. Okay. Then William Allen, known as Bill, born 25th of July 1884 at Eithon Lodge, Foveren, married Sarah. First marriage to Sarah, Sally Littlejohn, who died on 4th of February 1925 in Badulla, Ceylon, age 42. She is buried there. Of Aberdeen on 21st of January 1915 in St Andrews, Scots Kirk, Colombo. Joint wedding with Annie Ruxton. See below. William Allen and Sarah, they had 4 children, all born in Bandarawela, Ceylon. Marjorie, December 1915, married Graham Bickerton, moved to South Africa, 2 sons. Ivy Marion, known as Marion, August 1917, married William C. Wilson, lived in Aberdeen, 3 sons. William George Littlejohn, known as George, about 1919, married Sylvia, lived in London. George had polio or TB when a child, which left him disabled. Sylvia was also disabled. John Alexander Thompson, known as Jock, born 27th of June 1921, married Denise Harris, 1 daughter, died 2nd of February 1969. Jock lived for many years in Ceylon as a tea planter until the Sri Lankan government took over the tea industry. Okay, and his second marriage, this is William Allen's second marriage, was to Alma Cordelia Blacker in Ceylon. Died New Zealand, 1st of October 1993. 1 son, David Allen. And Bill died on the 26th of May 1957 at Christchurch, New Zealand, where they had lived for some years after leaving Ceylon. Third of Eleanor's children, John Thompson Allen, known as Jock, born 30th of September 1886 at Eithon Lodge, Foveren, married Janet Greenshields, 10th of November 1925 in Edinburgh. Interestingly, the marriage certificate states that his mother, Eleanor Allen or Ruxton, was deceased when she was not. Andrew Ruxton was a witness. No children. Died 25th of May 1947 at West Tun, Rakwana, Ceylon. I think Tun must be pronounced in the Scottish way there. I'm not sure, but whoops. Number 4, the 4th child of Eleanor, Christian Mary Allen, known as Chrissy, born 17th of June 1888 at Eithon Lodge, Foveren, died 15th of April 1964 at Aboyne in Aberdeenshire, not far from Tarland, which I know well. Okay, so let's go to the next page. So Eleanor Ann Thompson had the following children with her second husband, Charles Ruxton, the farmer, who died in 1901. 5, the 5th child, the first with Charles, is Annie, known as Nan or Nanny, Ellen Ruxton. Born 14th of May 1891 at Eithon Lodge, Foveren. Married Alexander Sandy Watson, 1882 to 1967, died in South Africa on the 21st of January 1915 in St Andrews, Scots Kirk, Colombo. Joint wedding with William Allen, C2 above. Sandy and Nan lived in Assam for many years while tea planting, 4 children. I think Colombo there's misspelt, isn't it? Should be Colombo. Died 27th of February 1976 in Salisbury, Wiltshire. I think we did once go and see them in Salisbury. My father took us there when we were young. Graduate of Aberdeen University, unusual at that time for a woman. Number 6, Charles Ruxton, my grandfather, born 3rd of November 1892 at Eithon Lodge, Foveren. Note, it appears that date of birth on his memorial stone is incorrect, as it seems to state 1882. Married Evelyn Day of Aberdeen on 25th of October 1924 in St Andrews, Scots Kirk, Colombo. Witnessed by William Allen above. And 4 sons. Died the 1st of November 1971 in Aberdeen City Hospital, age 78. 7, Andrew William Ruxton, born 21st of November 1893 at Eithon Lodge, Foveren. Married Janet Dunn, 3 children, moved to South Africa after World War II. And here is Eithon Lodge, Foveren, photographed by Mike Ruxton. I've actually been there as well. Okay, let's go on. It was the dower house of an estate there, I think. All right, this is a memorial stone of Eleanor Ann Thompson Allen or Ruxton, with her sons John and William, Jock and Bill, and daughter Christian at Allenvale Cemetery, Aberdeen. The inscription reads, "In loving memory of Eleanor Ann Thompson Allen or Ruxton, who died 23rd of September 1937, also of John Thompson Allen, who died at West Toon, Rakwana, Ceylon, 23rd of May 1947, second son of the above, and younger son of the late Captain William Allen, Ithen Lodge, Fovran. Also his brother William, who died at Christchurch, New Zealand, 26th of May 1957, and his sister Christian died 15th of April 1964. Scrolling down. Eleanor Allen, or Eleanor Ruxton, née Thompson, had 7 children under the age of 20 by the time she was a double widow in 1901. She had been left money and property and a trust for her children by her first husband, William Allen, and also by her second husband, Charles Ruxton. I have copies of both wills. This would be Shona McCullen, I think, saying this. By the 1901 census, shortly after the death of Charles, she appears to have given up residency at Ithen Lodge, Fovran, and was staying in Aberdeen. She was identified as living on own means, as was her mother, who was living with them. The Allen sons, William and Jock, attended Aberdeen Grammar School. The Ruxton sons, Charles and Andrew, attended Robert Gordon's College. Eleanor had a brother, John Thompson, who had been in Ceylon for some years, firstly working in the coffee trade, and when there was a disastrous failure of crops, he then became involved in the tea industry. Yes, and I have a footnote about that failure of the coffee crops, which involved a well-known switch to tea in Ceylon as it was. And the Scotsman James Taylor's role in that. It is highly likely that he encouraged the Allen and Ruxton boys to come to Ceylon and start work in the trade, starting as creepers, trainee planters, as there was significant opportunity there. There are ship records of the boys going out about 1909 with Eleanor to Ceylon, among other times. Excuse me. There is no evidence of the majority of the Allen or Ruxton family in the 1911 census other than Christian and Annie, so it could be assumed that they were established in Ceylon at that time. So that would be the 1911 UK census, I think. So they weren't there anymore in the UK. All 4 sons of Eleanor, Bill, Jock, Charles, and Andrew, established themselves in the tea industry, with one of her grandsons, Jock, also following suit. Documentation concerning some of the Allen or Ruxtons can be found on History of Ceylon Tea website, along with some photos of Bill and Charles. They held positions within the industry in trade associations. Bill Allen worked for the Uri Group, Uri Group in Ceylon for many years, manager at Passara between 1923 and 1930. John Thompson Allen, Jock, his brother, worked at Aigburth Rakwana between 1924 and 1927 as manager. Once established in country, their lifestyle appears to have been very much that of the time living within the British Empire, having significant financial freedom. Bill Allen sent all of his children back to Aberdeen to boarding school, as did his half-brothers. At least 2 of the family members in Ceylon were alcoholics, and alcoholism has also been a factor in further generations of Eleanor Thompson Allen Ruxton's family. All evidence points to the 7 Ruxton Allen siblings being close, with connections between them and their siblings' children or cousins continuing well until the end of their lives. Yeah. All right, so his half-brothers. Bill Allen sent all of his children back to Aberdeen to boarding school, as did his half-brothers. Well, I think one of them, Charles, my grandfather, he sent my father to Edinburgh, to Musselburgh, to Loreto School. Anyway, that's just one example or one fact. The spelling of my father's first name, I'm talking about, it's reverting to me now, not to Shona. The spelling of my father's first name is Allen with 2 L's. This is not the usual way, which is with 1 L. This is a deliberate inclusion and recognition of the close links with the Allen family, so that both of my father's given names are in fact originally family names, Allen and Day. I do not know if this was a particularly Scottish custom, but certainly inclusion of the mother's maiden name, Day, in this case, D-E-Y, sorry, as a second or third name was and remains common throughout the United Kingdom. So, for example, Ernest Sato was Ernest Mason Sato, and his mother was Margaret Mason. The intended effect is presumably to perpetuate maiden names in danger of being lost and to knit families together more closely. That's just my guess. All right, so after that, the family history. Number 2, my clockwise. It didn't quite go like clockwork, but anyway, my clockwise journey around the south of the island begins, leaving Colombo in heavy rain. On my second day in Sri Lanka, Sunday, September 3rd, I had booked a car with driver at the excellent hotel where I was staying, the Merino Beach 4-star, to go from Colombo to Kandy by way of the Royal Botanic Gardens at Peradeniya and the University of Peradeniya, formerly the University of Ceylon. Unfortunately, the rain was torrential as we left Colombo in a smart and luxurious gold-colored BMW, one of the hotel's fleet of 5, and many tuk-tuks, like three-wheelers, were already immobile with engines flooded. We got as far as Cashew Village, Kajugama, named after the cashew nuts grown there, and my driver suggested we might take a break. I bought a bagful of deviled cashews, and we were about to continue our journey when a problem with the steering presented itself. This took about 2 hours to resolve by ordering another BMW from Colombo. This time we made good progress, called in briefly at Susantha Spice and Herbal Garden, west of Kandy, where I bought some spiced tea, and we reached the Botanic Gardens at Peradeniya about 3:30 p.m. I enjoyed walking around the superb gardens and took many photographs, which are in the book. The gardens were also visited at least once by the main subject of my academic research, Sir Ernest Sato, 1843 to 1929, when he was on his way to England by sea, escorting the Thai Crown Prince, Prince Devan, to Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee in 1887. From there, we went on to the University of Peradeniya, where I was able to take photographs of the statue of the founder, Sir Ivor Jennings, 1903 to 1965, maternal grandfather of my friend, Professor Michael Watson, who teaches about no theatre to university students in Japan. Well, he's now retired, but anyway, he was teaching no to university students. Jennings later became the Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge University and was a distinguished constitutional lawyer who helped write the constitutions of several newly independent former British colonies after World War II, including Sri Lanka, Ceylon. Around 6 p.m., we reached the Hotel Cassandra, my perch for 2 nights, and my hotel driver left to return to Colombo. I told him that Japanese cars would probably be less liable to break down than German ones in the heavy rains of Asia, and he somewhat ruefully agreed. Yes, footnote. I've got a footnote there of Sato's diary. I will. It's quite a long note. Another one about the Oriental Jennings. If you want to read those, you're welcome. Just pause this video at this point and read it. I'm just going to carry on now. One-day tour to Dambulla and Sigiriya from Kandy. On Monday, September 4th, I had booked a one-day tour through booking.com, which I used many times and found very convenient. I had assumed this would be in a minibus tour with other people, as is usual in many countries, but it turned out that I had a large Japanese K car, a Daihatsu Tanto 660cc engine, all to myself with a good driver, whose full name is Don Thushara Indika Kumara Singhe, but he is usually known as Indika. The company was Mahaweli Tours. We went to the Buddhist cave temples at Dambulla and the rock fortress of a king at Sigiriya, north of Kandy. On the way, we also took in an ornate Hindu temple, perhaps the first I have ever been in, and a traditional curry lunch made especially mild for tourists under an awning in a field. We returned to Kandy in time for me to see part of a cultural dancing show and the famous Temple of the Tooth. I was not yet used to tipping guides, and I probably gave too little to the man at Sigiriya, just 1,000 Sri Lanka rupees. The guide who attached himself willy-nilly to me at the Temple of the Tooth I found rather more grasping. Indika himself thoroughly deserved the 5,000 rupees, which I decided to give him for his good driving and company. Okay. World-famous train ride from Kandy to Ella. Whoops. On Tuesday, September the 5th, I first checked out of the Hotel Cassandra early, great breakfasts, and went by tuk-tuk to Kandy station. The driver was very skillful, weaving in and out of rush hour traffic. The hotel receptionist and manager, Nuan, had told me that 500 rupees was the standard fare, but he also deserved a tip for his good service, and he received a modest one. I had booked the famous train journey from Kandy to Ella about 3 months in advance, as advised, because the trip is so popular, though in fact the first-class carriage in which I travelled was not full. The Chinese-built train climbs out of Kandy at about 9 a.m., and after a couple of hours you are in hill country with many tea plantations and stunning waterfalls and scenery on both sides. Unfortunately, I got a middle finger on my left hand caught in a closing toilet door, which was quite painful, and the wound required dressing and covering to avoid infection for the rest of my time in Sri Lanka. It is almost fully healed now. My lunch, purchased beforehand at Kandy station, and which I put in a luggage net on the seat back in front of me, disappeared temporarily when the seats were rotated to face forward in the carriage, but I was overjoyed to be reunited with it soon after. There's a little note on Japanese K-cars. Footnote. The countryside as far as Ella, going via Nuwara Elia, is truly spectacular, though the glorious Elgin Falls were barely visible through the mist and rain. There are also great photo opportunities of distant mountains. Ella. The train reached Ella on time at 3:30 p.m. and the proprietor of the Royal Mount Ella guest house very kindly came to collect me from the station in his car, in spite of a slight delay caused by a traffic jam. He may have been worried about tuk-tuk drivers overcharging his guests. The Royal Mount was a wonderful place to stay, very clean, with delightful views, mosquito nets for the bed, and delicious breakfasts. The proprietor is very solicitous, and I had only minor issues. A brief loss of Wi-Fi one evening, the toilet cistern empty on one occasion, and no cards accepted for payment. Be warned that you will probably need to settle up in cash. But still, it's a lovely place to stay, especially in the morning. You hear the children chanting from a nearby school, and it's absolutely, the views are gorgeous. Faisal, the driver. I stayed for 3 nights at the Royal Mount Ella. On the morning of September 6th at 9 a.m. prompt, I met Mohammed Faisal, my excellent driver, in the Suzuki Spacia, a K car with a 660cc engine, the same size engine as the Daihatsu Tanto, for 5 days as far as Colombo. He is a licensed guide. Faisal works for Sri Lanka Driver Hire, and I have much pleasure in highly recommending his services. Nothing was too much trouble for him, and he was very flexible, always willing to discuss the sightseeing plan and revise it when necessary. Having a car is by far the best thing for flexibility, of course, avoiding the dirty and dangerous buses and crowded trains, and it was not so expensive, 75 British pounds per day. And having a driver makes one feel a little like a 19th century globetrotter, or maybe Sir Ernest Sato with his excellent manservant, Noguchi Tomizo, in Japan. Meanwhile, given the difference in our ages, Faisal told me he felt it was like looking after his father, who is just 1 year older than me. How funny. Hopton Group Estate. With Faisal, I first went to Hopton Group Tea Estate near Badulla, which was my top priority because of the family connections described above. Then we went to the Ulva Halpewate tea factory for a fascinating tour of the tea-making process and the Demodara railway station with its unique loop. Faisal also dropped me near the famous Nine-Arch Bridge for a photo opportunity, but I did not stay long enough to see a train passing over it. Well, there are many of such photographs and videos on the internet. On YouTube, there are an awful lot of videos of the Nine-Arch Bridge. Hopton Group Bungalow, there it is. A lovely house in a lovely setting. Nuwara Elia. On September 7th, we headed for Nuwara Elia, stopping at Hakgala Botanical Garden, founded in 1861 by an English botanist named George Henry Kendrick Thwaites, 1812 to 1882, from Bristol. Then at Lake Gregory, a reservoir built in 1873 and named after Sir William Gregory, 1816 to 1892, a governor in the British colonial period, and at last to the Grand Hotel in Nuwara Elia, known as Little England, for a delicious English high tea served from 12:30 p.m. and costing 6,000 rupees. I had a quick look at the old British-style post office. Waldemar Estate. From there, we went on to Waldemar Tea Estate, where my father was born, but it took some finding. We had to leave the car and get a tuk-tuk driver to take us the last 2.5 kilometers on a rough, unpaved road, with me marveling at the inaccessibility and wondering if and how tea might be transported on it. But the welcome for me as an unannounced visitor, as at Hopton Group the day before, was very warm. I had actually written a letter to Hopton Group, so I was perhaps not totally unannounced there, although I never asked whether they had received the letter. Yala National Park. On September the 8th, it was time to leave Ella, but not before climbing Little Adams Peak, where there were what are best described as Club Med type activities, a zip line and a swing for tourists, and seeing Rawana Waterfall. We visited rock carvings at Buduruwagala with a 51-foot standing Buddhist statue said by the guide to be the tallest in the world since the Taliban willfully and maliciously destroyed the great carvings at Bamyan. At last, we reached Yala National Park around 2:15 p.m. and spent 4 hours on safari in the park with a Land Rover, a vanishing breed, mostly replaced by Toyota Hiluxes and Indian Mahindras, the older versions of which seem quite top-heavy. Yes, Thwaites. There's a note about Thwaites there. He was the superintendent of the Royal Botanic Gardens at Peradeniya, 1849 to 1880. We did not see any leopards or bears, but that was never likely as they are very shy, and there was plenty of other wildlife, including the only elephant I saw in the whole of my trip. The park attraction cost about 34,000 rupees, and it is quite long and uncomfortable if you don't like off-road driving. It was my first ever safari, as I have not yet been to Africa. From the park, we drove straight to Gaul, quite a long way across the southern part of the island, but with good fast roads, reaching the Brixia, another name for Brescia in Lombardy, North Italy, guest house at about 9 p.m. Gaul. I spent 2 nights at Gaul. Sorry. What happened there? Oh dear. Getting lost. I spent 2 nights at Gaul and strongly recommend the Brixia guest house and cafe. The facilities are very good and the hospitality is very kind. Look for the delicious colazione, Italian breakfast, provided by the Italian lady of the house. On September 9th, I had the chance to walk through the old town and around the ramparts of Gaul Fort. The 2 museums, the National and especially the Maritime Archaeology Museum, are very good, and the various churches, Anglican, Dutch Reform, etc., are fine. Gaul is an astonishing mixture of cultures, and there is even an international cricket ground. I had tasty calamari curry lunch in the company of 2 hungry young cats at Unawatuna Beach, and then went to another secret beach recommended by Faisal, which was very pleasant and not at all spoilt. By this time, the Rugby World Cup in France was beginning, and I was able to watch games live at the guest house. Those of you who know me will know that how important that is to me. Okay. Return to Colombo. September 10th, Sunday, was the day on which I had to return to Colombo for the final night before departure. It was the most hectic day of all. On the way to Colombo, we first stopped at my request at a tsunami museum, which was a grim and sobering reminder of the tsunami at Aceh in Indonesia on December 26, 2004. It reached Sri Lanka, which is not far away as the crow flies, and struck almost all of the coastline, killing 40,000 people. This number is second only to Indonesia itself, where 170,000 died. We also visited a moonstone mine where I bought a small blue topaz gem and a turtle sanctuary, and I went on a river safari during which fish massaged my feet. Quite a memorable experience. Then we drove, this was at my request, to Bevis Bauer's house named Brief in the countryside with its amusing, playful garden. Bevis was the elder brother of Geoffrey Bauer, 1919 to 2003, the famous Sri Lankan architect. The brothers were both bachelors. Geoffrey was a self-taught architect after studying English at Cambridge University, also my alma mater, which makes him my senpai. That's my senior in Japanese terms, Japanese word senpai. Okay. Whoops. Next page. After tea at Mount Lavinia Hotel with its view of the distant high buildings of Colombo, I checked in at the Desarum house by Geoffrey Bauer in Colombo. A lovely quiet place after a breathless day of sightseeing for my last night, beautifully designed, a little old-fashioned in a nice way, and genteel. Anthony was the man on duty and looked after me very well, including a very good breakfast for 2,000 rupees on the next morning, and he even helped me pack a poster into my backpack. Yes, I was having trouble putting it in. He started to help me. Lovely man. On the evening of September 10th, I went to the Marino Beach Hotel to eat a complimentary dinner offered by Ramshid, the manager, who had read in my review of the hotel on Booking.com about my problems with the car 1 week before and wanted to make amends. The dinner is buffet style, as is the hotel breakfast, but it is full of variety and delicious. Leaving Sri Lanka, on September 11th, Monday, it was time to take a taxi to Colombo Airport. I used Yanara Tours, who had served me well on my arrival, for the return journey. We left early at 8:30 a.m. to allow for traffic jams. My Sri Lankan Airlines flight to Singapore was scheduled for 12:15 a.m. and on time. Practical matters. Assessment of cars used. I hired 3 cars, each with a driver, on this trip. Ranking them in order, I would put the Daihatsu Tanto first because it has large windows, ideal for sightseeing. The Suzuki Spacia was good, though it had a large front shelf, and I absent-mindedly left some documents there when I left the vehicle on the last day, forgetting to check that space. It seems to be an older design than the Daihatsu, but I had access to free Wi-Fi throughout the 5 days in the Suzuki, apparently via a hotspot on my driver Faisal's phone. This was very convenient for making advance bookings of taxis, contacting hotels in advance about arrival times, etc. So no time wasted in the car, really. Both the K cars seem to be direct imports from Japan, complete with the original navigation systems for Japan only and instructions in Japanese. I understood them, but they weren't much use where we were. The BMW was not only inadequate for the reasons already mentioned, but being low to the ground with smallish windows, it is not good for sightseeing. The added security and safety features of the luxury German car with its stronger and heavier chassis may seem attractive, but Sri Lankan roads are quite congested and it is generally difficult to achieve higher and more dangerous speeds than 50 kilometers per hour, except when overtaking or on one of the few motorways. That said, I would not like to drive in this country because there is a great deal of seemingly risky overtaking on narrow roads, and it is quite normal to be driving within a few inches of a tuk-tuk or bus. The bus drivers compete with each other for passengers and race between bus stops, which makes them take unwarranted risks. Purchase of air tickets. I initially booked my air tickets online through expedia.co.jp on March the 7th, 2023, well in advance of the trip to which I was so looking forward. I planned to fly from Fukuoka to Bangkok with Thai Airways on September 1st, spend one night there, and fly on to Colombo with Sri Lankan Airlines on the following morning. The return flight was also through Bangkok. However, on July 24th, I received a no-reply email from Thai Airlines stating that my flight departing Fukuoka on September the 1st had been moved to 24 hours later. This in no way suited me, so I rebooked through Expedia with Japan Airlines, JAL, which involved flying from Fukuoka to Haneda, Tokyo International Air Terminal, and then on to Bangkok to catch the same Sri Lankan Airlines flight as previously booked. This cost a bit more because of the 2 extra domestic flights within Japan, outward and return, that is, but all went smoothly, including the return flights via Singapore. I was also able to add an extra day in Sri Lanka to my schedule and leave later on September 1st from Fukuoka, 2000, with no stay in Bangkok required. So all was well that ended well, but Thai Airways took their time to give me the refund owed to me due to their cancellation of the original booking. I finally got the money on September the 12th, the day of my return to Japan. Concluding remarks. Lastly, I would like to thank all those people who kindly contributed to the writing of this book by providing comments, including the foreword by the ambassador, information and advice, and of course, all those who helped make my time in Sri Lanka so enjoyable. Anyway, a question remains in my mind as to why so many Ruxton Allen family members went to Ceylon, as it was then called. As Marg Hart, daughter of Andrew William Ruxton, AWR, asked so pertinently in an email to me, was there no suitable work for them in the Aberdeen area or closer to home? What made tea planting so attractive? Again, from my knowledge of Thomas Blake Glover, 1838 to 1911, he was born in Fraserburgh on the north coast of Aberdeenshire, but got a job with the great Scottish trading company Jardine Matheson and moved to Shanghai in 1857, moving to Japan in 1859, where he spent the rest of his life working as a trader in all sorts of goods, initially Japanese tea, until his death at the age of 73 in 1911. The parallel is irresistible. Is this simply an example of the Scottish diaspora, which spread far and wide across the world, especially in the 19th century? One possible reason for the pull of Ceylon is that society in northeast Scotland was quite limited and puritanical. My father, ADR, was forced to spend school holidays with some very strict Presbyterian elderly relatives, since he could not go home to Ceylon because of the time involved, the sea journey, of course. On the other hand, his description of the planter's life, seen initially through his child's eyes and recounted later to my brother, is also worth noting and quoting, so I give the last word to him. The lifestyle was pretty boring. I mean, they were stuck out in the sticks. The telephone communications weren't all that wonderful in those days. They didn't pick up the phone and speak to their mates. But what did happen was they had a little club there. We always met there on a Wednesday, all the surrounding planters and their wives. The wives would play tennis and bridge or knit or whatever, and it was the highlight of the week. There was one other highlight, because subsequently my parents became the sort of center point of Lunugala and that area, and everybody came to them on Sunday, and it was invariably curry. And when I say curry, it was made by the Apu, head servant, that's the cook, who was called Simon, who was a very senior man in the household. He ruled the roost at Hopton Group of all the servants. There were 11 servants, by the way, and a gardener, 2 gardeners. Okay, so that's Ian Charles Ruxton, October 7th, 2023 is when I wrote this family history, etc. So yeah, this is my dad interviewed by my brother Sandy on 30th of May, 2006. Then there are some immediate reflections on my Sri Lanka trip posted to Facebook, hence the English is quite informal. So am I glad I made the effort to get down to Sri Lanka? You betcha. It's a fantastic country, full of astonishing variety. An undiscovered gem as far as most Japanese people are concerned, though many Europeans have discovered it. Hardly any Americans at this time, so the tourism is quite European-oriented. I did notice quite a few Russians, certainly at the airport, by the way. I had personal reasons for going, meeting cousins and visiting 2 tea plantations associated deeply with my family's history, Waldemar and Hopton Group. For me personally, it was life-changing. I felt so at home and was made very welcome, and I think this is in the DNA of the people who have been at a world maritime crossroads for centuries, with cultural contacts of all kinds, including 3 colonial powers, Portuguese, Dutch, and British. Sri Lanka is an island country, as is Japan, and about the size of Kyushu, but the histories are so different, with Japan being closed to foreigners for 250 years, the Edo period, 1603 to 1867. The contrast is fascinating and highly instructive. To some degree, it may show that geographical location is destiny. Japan is stuck like an afterthought on the end of Northeast Asia, more or less the last place or terminus, while Sri Lanka is much more accessible and central, a convenient stopping point on the way to many places for ships and boats. I really think it's a pity that Japanese tourists tend to look no further than Thailand and Malaysia or Singapore. Take that extra short onward flight to Colombo. It really is worth it. Well, I think nowadays there is a direct flight from Tokyo to Colombo, actually. The Philippines is often said to be the country where Asia wears a smile, but I think Sri Lanka offers strong competition in that area. These are just random jottings at Haneda Airport on arrival back in Japan. Zehi Sri Lanka e itte mite kudasai. Please be sure to visit Sri Lanka. On the 12th of September 2023 at Haneda Domestic Terminal 1, en route for Fukuoka Airport and my home in Kee-tah-kew-shoo. Yes, there's a note about Sri Lanka being considerably larger than Kyushu, but smaller than Hokkaido. Okay. I checked that afterwards. And some notes. All the color photographs shown below were taken and edited, i.e. cropped and enhanced, with my iPhone 11, usually on the spot, but sometimes later. A playlist of 85 short videos, which I took with my iPhone, titled Sri Lanka 2023, September 1st to 12th, is on my YouTube channel, Ian Ruxton. A Facebook album of all the photos which I took in Sri Lanka, over 1,400, of which more than 800 appear in the Travelogue, is here. So there's and then recommended reading, Lonely Planet Guide to Sri Lanka, Angela McCarthy and T.M. Devine, Tea and Empire, James Taylor in Victorian Ceylon, Michael Ondaatje, Running in the Family, Vintage Classics 2022, Cherry Briggs, The Teardrop Island, Following Victorian Footsteps Across Sri Lanka, She travels in the footsteps of Sir James Emerson Tennant. Rare books, Celevan or Charles F. Brooks Smith, Two Leaves and a Bud, Tales of a Ceylon Planter, Colchester, Essex, Blue Zoo Publishing 2000. Charles Ruxton is mentioned 4 times in the book, which may be hard to come by. I purchased my copy at the British Empire and Commonwealth Museum, Temple Meads, Bristol on December 9th, 2007. I think that museum no longer exists. It was really about slavery, I believe. Of course, Bristol is known for that topic. Sir William Ivor Jennings and H.A.I. Gunetileke, The Road to Peradeniya, an autobiography, and James Emerson Tennant, Ceylon, an account of the island, physical, historical, and topographical, with notices of its natural history, antiquities, and productions. Spottiswoode and Company, 2 volumes, first published in 1859, available as a Kindle ebook. And this is where the journey begins. Here am I at my local station in Japan, Tabata Station. I always take a photo in front of the mirror, which is a full-length mirror, before leaving. So there I was. This is Fukuoka Airport, watching rugby from the Rugby World Cup with my MacBook Air, which now seems to have possibly died. I hope not. I'm investigating that. Reading a paper about Sir Ivor Jennings, Tokyo International Air Terminal. I rather liked it. It was my first experience there. This is Bangkok Airport at 5 a.m. There was a Boots chemist at the airport. Coconut water and durian candy, which caused a tooth filling to drop out later. Oh dear. There we are, arriving in Sri Lanka, Bangkok to Colombo. It's a verdant green. And first day, well, passport and visa check. Waiting for my taxi for Charles Ruxton. The Merino Beach Hotel. I very much loved the hotel. It was lovely. The Indian Ocean from the hotel room balcony. Rooftop swimming pool. Garden bar. Cricket. Asia Cup. Merino Beach Hotel lobby. Very smart. Galle Face Hotel, built by the British in the 19th century. Fine building. There are many portraits of famous guests here. Alec Guinness and Japanese Crown Prince, later Emperor Showa, who visited in 1921. This is the Duke of Edinburgh, late Duke of Edinburgh's first car. Lovely. Hotel crockery. The hotel dates from the 1860s. These are my cousins. First time to meet them. And they gave me a curry dinner. Very kind of them. Mervyn and Ian. And so on. This is the Scots Kirk in Colombo, scene of Ruxton and Ellen weddings. We went there in Mervyn's car after supper. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there because I can go on and on. I mean, how many pages is it? The total number of pages, well, of actual photographs is 377. So I don't think I shall go on to the end. So I've stopped the share, and thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much, and bye now.